Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 717, written by Dylan Roy, The Town That Doesn't Exist. I live in very rural southern Appalachia, and yesterday I was going over to the next county to look at a lawn mower. It's an area I'm very familiar with, although I haven't been to the area in over a year. While on the way, I came upon a town that has never been there before. Now, there is a small community there, and it was by the same name, but this was a full-fledged small town. Had a couple red lights, a main street with probably 15 to 20 storefronts, everything. I was so taken aback, I stopped in the middle of the road. After a few moments, a car behind me honked the horn, so I pulled into a parallel spot and got out. The small towns in my area are all the same. Tiny, dingy, run down. Had a heyday in the 50s and 60s, but all have fallen into disrepair. Not this one. Everything was pristine and new looking. Swept sidewalks, shiny windows, and clean brick. The people I saw were dressed in modern clothes and had the same appearance that most people in the area have. Healthy, but weather-beaten and aged beyond their years. The vehicles I saw were fairly modern, new to 20 years old. Nothing out of the ordinary. I walked into the little restaurant, Cream of the Crop Cafe, and it looked like every other little restaurant in the area. Booths and tables, a bar top with a register, and the kitchen behind it. Some cheesy James Dean and Marilyn Monroe pictures on the walls. I walked up to the girl at the counter and asked her where I was. She seemed puzzled because I could tell she knew I was local by my attire and my accent, but she said, "Minneapolis." I said, "So this is Minneapolis? When did they build all this?" Again, she looked puzzled and said, "I don't know, the 1800s sometime?" I couldn't handle it anymore, so I just left. Got in my truck and went on to look at the lawnmower. On my way back through, about an hour later, there was Minneapolis like it should be. Just a couple houses and an old general store. No town, no red lights, no cafe, no sidewalks. Freaked me out something awful. I've never experienced something like this, as I'm pretty mundane and boring. It wasn't a hallucination, I don't think. Everything else was the same. It wasn't a dream, so I don't know. Case notes for file 717. The Town That Doesn't Exist. There are plenty of instances where people are witnessing rooms and areas and even entire towns that simply don't exist in this universe. But in all these cases, they're momentary. Is it as simple to explain as a crossover event? Honestly, lately I'm beginning to think that these crossover events are very frequent. Like we're in a superposition state of quantum flux between universes. And these changes, these fluctuations are happening very often. It's just that we don't notice it because the changes between universes are so tiny, and often there may not even be detectable changes, they could be subatomic. I also don't think this could be a time anomaly because you described that there are cars there that look modern. So it does sound like a different universe, not a glimpse into the past. It's just a reality where in that particular Appalachian Minneapolis, it's just more developed than in the current one. I was very curious, so I did a Google Maps scan of the area, assuming it's the town that is in North Carolina. If so, the development is very sparse indeed. There was a church that I saw, post office, just an inn, and some houses. There wasn't even a 4-lane crossing where traffic lights would be installed, and there definitely weren't any traffic lights anywhere. Moreover, I don't think you could possibly have confused this for a different town because it's a straight shot. There's only one road that's going through. And it leads up north, where even in that town, I don't think there was a cafe that I saw, and there's no traffic lights either. It is a bit more developed, with a general store and stuff like that, but there is no real development like you described. So no, I think this was a simple case of a crossover event. Temporary, and I wish I could tell you why it happens. I just think that it's happening very often, very frequently. If I had to give a gut instinct on how it happens, or at least when, it would be when we're in a lower state of consciousness, so dreaming or sleeping or very tired, where our consciousness isn't quite as rooted in and anchored in the current universe. That would be my guess. Case file number 718, written by Blue Eyes 284, The Universe and Radio. 2 days ago, we were driving home from another country. We chose to drive at night to avoid the high temperatures and the traffic, but we only partially managed to do that because many others had the same bright idea. The highway was full of drivers in a rush, frantically changing lanes, speeding way above the limit, so all of this felt like a bad idea from the start. My husband, the driver, felt tired even before starting off at 9 p.m., and by 1 a.m. he felt even more tired. I tried to keep him talking and gave him coffee, but he had a few moments when it felt like we might need to stop. I felt alert and fine, but I've been sipping on an energy drink the whole trip. Around 2:30 a.m., we started talking about the attention wildlife sign. You know, the one with the deer running across lanes and trying to imagine what would happen if we hit anything at 140 kilometers an hour. He said that at one time, I answered 304 to something he said, but I don't remember that. What I do remember is that around 2:54, a fox darted straight for our car, and I think we hit it. We were fine though. The next thing I remember is the clock showing 3:05 and my neck burning with pain, feeling hot and sticky and smelling blood. I panicked and turned on the lights, but there was nothing wrong. I had no signs on my neck, no bruises, nothing was different. The pain itself faded in 5 minutes, and so did the smell. I think I died and jumped dimensions at 3:04. I think we already hit a deer, and the fact I'm stupid enough to wear a seatbelt with its edge on the side of my neck because it feels weird on my boobs actually killed me. My husband doesn't remember anything weird happening. The kids were asleep the whole time, so as far as they are concerned, nothing happened. I know some of you will say I fell asleep after we talked about precisely this scenario, and that caused me to dream it vividly. The thing is, I can never sleep in a moving vehicle because I have car sickness, and closing my eyes will instantly make me sick. I have never fallen asleep in a car in my whole life. So what do you think happened? Oh, and I just remembered something else. When we were talking about the possibility of hitting an animal, my husband switched radio stations, and there was a remix of a 90s song I heard for the first time. I remember telling him that this is the first time in decades I heard this song, and that the radio station is the best. After the weird smell or pain thing happened, so about 15 minutes after, I noticed the radio was playing the same song on the same station, and I mentioned this to him. But he didn't understand what I meant by this and said he never heard the song before and that he just switched the radio to that particular station randomly. Case file number 719, written by Retribution 1824, Ghostly Balls in the Sky. I think it was summer, about 1990. I lived in a small town in Pennsylvania. A friend and I were heading to the next town over, and we were taking a shortcut on a rural road. There were a few houses on this road. We reached a stop sign intending to turn right to head towards the main road. There was a house on our left. It was dark outside at the time, and we saw a strange pattern of lights above the house. We thought maybe they were having a get-together in the back, and what we were seeing was sort of dance light, like the ball in a dance club. Haze and fog aren't uncommon, so we thought the light was just hitting low-hanging fog. The light pattern was ghostly pale, not bright at all. It consisted of a central round light surrounded by smaller circular round balls, smaller than the center one. It was like 20 feet over the top of the house. The outer balls would rotate around the center, slow to a stop, converge towards the center ball, then return to their former position and begin to rotate again. We sat there for about 2 minutes, watching, debating what it was. The owner must have seen us sitting at the stop, and they turned the porch light on and opened the front door. We just left at that point. As we reached the main road, we saw the light moving across the sky. It was dim, and the mountain terrain made it difficult to keep it in sight. We saw it off in the distance, not at a very high altitude, but a fair distance from us. We eventually lost sight of it as the road ran downhill, and then never saw it again. To this day, I still have no idea what we saw. It didn't appear to be solid, but rather ghostly glowing balls. We told some friends what we saw, and of course we were laughed at. Still talk to my buddy. We're 1,200 miles apart now, but he remembers too. I'm not making any claims in the least, just saying I have no idea what it was.